Alright, we're starting a new video series, and this is going to be all about innovation. And the reason why we're even talking about innovation is because it's one of the most important qualities of entrepreneurs, right? It's just one of the basic tenets of entrepreneurship. You are creating something new. You're starting up a new business, even if it's something that's already been established, like you're establishing a clothing brand or your own like fashion brand, or you're starting a software company or things like that, right? Clothing brands and fashion, they've been around for a while, obviously, but you are starting something unique yourself. You need to be able to do something new so that other people will buy from you. Why would they buy from you if you're doing the same old thing as everybody else? So that's why innovation is so important. That's why we're going to be talking about it a bit here. So what is innovation? It's essentially the combination between creating something new and changing something that already exists. Something that's completely new is what we would call an invention, and then changing your current processes and working within that box is what we would just call change management. But if you combine those two, innovation is new change. New change. It's thinking outside the box. It's trying to find original ways of doing something new. You have some originality, some novelty to what you're trying to change here. So we're going to start first by talking about personal competencies. Instead of going into innovation and the different types of innovation and all that stuff, I want to start with talking about the innovator, you. Because as we can see on screen here, innovation is only as good as its innovators. People drive innovation. So that's why we as entrepreneurs need to be able to have these personal competencies in order to be good innovators. And these are all competencies that we can work on. Nobody's born an innovator, just like nobody's born a leader, but it's a skill that you can work on, and it's a skill that you can practice. So the first one we're going to talk about is something called empathy. And empathy is essentially the ability to understand and share the feelings of other people. But you might be asking me, why is empathy important to innovation? Well, like I said, innovation is driven by people. And you're not going to be the only innovator in your business, in your startup. No entrepreneur, no business person, no leader, nobody can do anything completely on their own. We need a team. We need to build relationships. We need to build partnerships in order to effectively innovate. So, empathy is a very important skill in doing that, in building teams, in building relationships and partnerships. So the more you can empathize with other people, the better team dynamics you'll have, the better you'll all be able to innovate together. But then how? How can we be empathetic? How can we work on our empathy skills? Well, I like to go to something called the whole self. And it's a concept from this book called Applied Empathy from a guy named Michael Ventura. And he basically says there's a bunch of different parts to ourself. And if we can get in touch with each of those parts and work on them, we'll be able to more easily connect with other people and build those teams, build those relationships. So I'm going to talk briefly about the whole self so we can be aware of it, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. So we have the physical side to ourselves, our physiological health and well-being. We have our emotional self or emotional side. So this is things like our mental health, being able to healthily manage and control our emotions, our emotional intelligence, understanding our biases, understanding maybe some self-imposed limitations that we put on ourselves. Then we have something called the inspired self, and this is basically our goal setting, our want and our drive to create stuff, to do stuff. We have our community self, so this is basically where we fit within our community, whether that's our family or our friends, our colleagues, right? So it's things like, who do we rely on for support? And who do we offer our support to? We have our intellectual self. So this is where we are learning stuff. We're able to ask questions. We're able to explore, that kind of stuff. Then we have our mindful self. And this is all about mindfulness, which is about being able to be present and be in the moment. How do I feel right now? How does the other person feel right now? It's all about just being conscious and just being aware of ourselves, our surroundings, everything like that. And lastly, we have our aspirational self. And our aspirational self is basically, it's a very high level way of thinking. What is our vision for our life? Where do we see ourselves going? What do we want to do with our life? What is our purpose in life? All of that falls under aspirational. So if we can work on building up each of these parts and getting in touch with each of these parts, it'll help us be more empathetic people. The next competency we're going to talk about is creativity. And creativity is essentially being able to do new and original things, being imaginative. And it's essentially just changing the way we think, maybe depending on the situation. So I have 4 different ways of thinking up on screen here. We have what's called fluent thinking, which is where you create many options for something. We have flexible thinking, is where you can create a variety of options. So it's not just about quantity anymore, it's just about breadth, about that variety of different options. You have original thinking, where you're creating novel or original or new options. That's maybe more what we think of when we hear the word creativity. And then we have elaborate thinking, where we can create detailed options, refined options, getting very detailed with what those options actually are. So it's not just about quantity, it's not just about variety, it's about really honing in on our thinking. Next, we have adaptability. And adaptability is essentially our ability to change course. Right? We can have plans all we want, but nothing ever goes completely to plan. Things have to change. So how easily can we do that? How flexible are we? So usually when people think about adaptability, they think about being reactive, right? Something happens and you have to pivot. But you can also be adaptive by being proactive, being able to see things before they happen or as they happen maybe, putting in processes in place so that if something goes wrong, you can easily change a lot quicker. And lastly, it's not just about being proactive, it's not just about being reactive, but it's also about being resilient through the change. As you're adapting, being resilient through that so you can keep going and be as successful as you can. Next, we're going to talk about ability to develop innovations. So this competency is basically taking that creativity and turning that into existence. You're applying creativity, you're applying adaptability to real life things, your real life products, your processes. We'll talk about what these other words, positions and paradigms, mean in another video. But it's the ability to actually materialize your creativity. So it's when you're actually creating things, you're designing things, and you're being able to communicate those and able to create those ideas. Next is our ability to lead innovative cultures. Because again, entrepreneurs are leaders. We can't do this ourselves, so we have a team of people, we have partners, we have employees, right? And as entrepreneurs, we need to be able to lead these teams, our business, in an innovative way. And there's 3, and I'm going to put in quotation marks here, simple ways that we can do that. And I say simple in quotations because, of course, it's easier said than done. But here we go. You can lead by example. If you want people to be innovative, you need to show that you are innovative yourself. Next, you need to be able to inspire and motivate your people. If you can empower them, if you want them to be innovative, empower them to do that. Inspire them to take those safe risks, right? Do all of that good stuff to inspire them, get them hyped up on innovation. And lastly is really just to drive home values that foster innovation. Things like open communication, things like teamwork, all of that stuff. If you can foster those values in your business or your organization, your teams, you'll be able to spark more innovation among your people. Lastly, we have our ability to lead change, right? We know that innovations are new changes, right? Remember that Venn diagram? Well, we have to be able to lead that change. We got the new stuff, we got the creativity down, the adaptability. Now we need to work on that change aspect. And I have up here 4 points, and they're called the 4 factors of management, I think they're called. And it's essentially what you need to do any sort of management. If you're running a business, if you're doing project management, anything like that. You have these 4 steps. You have the plan phase, organize, execute, or maybe you'll see it called lead, and control. Planning is all about setting your vision and creating your mission, setting your objectives and your goals, right? Set those, and then the organize phase is where you start to prepare for those goals. Prepare your team and organize them so they're ready to go. Let them know about the goal setting, get them involved with that goal setting, and then you execute. You execute your plan, you lead your team so that you can achieve those objectives. This is where we're leading by example, we're making those innovations. And then in the control phase, that's when you are evaluating how you're doing. You evaluate performance, you change things as you need to, you evaluate those changes. You're just trying to make sure that everything is running smoothly.